Welcome to a special bonus episode of Pop-O-Holics, the show about hot takes on other not tasty pancakes. I'm your host, Christian Katie, and I am joined by my two best friends,
Chris Conkling
and Brian Dupree.
And we got a bonus app. We're going to get right into it. This bonus episode, we're going to be doing a small but very enjoyable review of The Suicide Squad. Trailer coming.
Robert DuBois. He's in prison for putting Superman in the ICU with a kryptonite bullet.
I'm not joining your Suicide Squad.
We'll see.
My court date is coming up. And Miss Waller said maybe you could help me out.
You're flexing in my door!
Everyone stand down.
Miss Waller, I don't...
Stand down!
I wouldn't take such extreme measures if this mission went more important than you could possibly imagine. Are you in or out? Good. Let's meet your team.
It's okay, I'm not okay.
Each member is chosen for his or her own completely unique set of abilities.
I need to feel the raindrops on my head.
Hey guys, sorry I'm late. Had to go number 2.
Good to know.
That is from the trailer of Suicide Squad. Suicide Squad, written and directed by James Gunn, released this year, and it stars Idris Elba. Who else does it star? Because I don't know if we have the notes pulled up for this.
We don't, but it stars Margot Robbie. It stars David Dastmalchian, John Cena. I'm just going off the top of my head here.
Top of the flag.
Kinnamen,
Top of my. I was
Sylvester
thinking Rick
Stallone.
Flag. Who was playing Rick Flag?
I think it's Richard.
Joel Kinnamen as Rick Flag.
Joel Kinnamen. Thank you.
Got Peter Capaldi as well.
Awesome. So this is coming off of the backs of the DC, the Warner Brothers, trying to right the wrongs of the ship that has sailed. That is the DCU. But you know, we're getting a couple.
No, that other movie never happened. This is the Suicide Squad. It's the official.
Did it happen?
This is the one.
Is it in canon? Is it in the same canon?
It's forgotten.
Who knows? Who cares? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So we're getting this kind of reboot, reimagining sequel. Who knows? After the original Suicide Squad, which was written and directed by David Ayer, and had some studio kerfuffles, and it just wasn't a great movie. It had Jared Leto going with like damaged written on his forehead, and we were like, "What is happening?" A lot of like boring, uninspired action scenes. And then we get this, James Gunn, the leader of Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, took obscure characters, made them famous. So does he do it in this, the Suicide Squad, making a bunch of unknown characters into the pop culture stratosphere? This is the question we're going to answer. We're going to do spoilers and then have some spoiler conversations, talk about some favorite moments, and that'll be it. Before we get started, though, what did I want to bring up? I was going to bring up something. Who knows? Who cares? What are our thoughts? I had a thought.
We cared. If you remember,
you know,
bring it
it's
back,
it's off to a great start. Pod's off to a great start.
This is what happens when we don't write show notes.
I know. Seriously. What did we think about the Suicide Squad? Chris, I'm going to start with you.
I had a blast with this movie. It's so much fun getting to see James Gunn work outside of the Marvel system. And I say that because, like, while I love both of those Guardians of the Galaxy movies, prior to Guardians of the Galaxy, he was known for very violent, grotesque films, you know? And I feel like with the Suicide Squad, he was able to kind of swing back the pendulum a little bit because of the R rating and get back to his roots and lean into who he really is and the type of content that he genuinely enjoys making, because all bets were off. You know, DC was basically like, you can do whatever you want as long as you come work for us. And I just think the Suicide Squad was the perfect comic book for him to adapt into a film, considering that, like the Guardians, you know, they're a bunch of criminal misfits, and he can kind of play around with that and genuinely create some heartfelt moments in this film with people that typically you would think were despicable. So I think all around the performances are a lot of fun. There's some great comedic moments. And then, as I mentioned, some genuine heartfelt moments as well. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie.
Very good. Brian, your non-spoiler thoughts on Suicide Squad?
Yeah, I really enjoyed this one as well. To your point, Chris, this movie very much leans into its R rating in a pretty surprising fashion. It's hyper gory, and I was kind of squirming throughout a lot of this movie because I'm kind of sensitive to that stuff. But it has what you would expect James Gunn bringing to it. Solid humor throughout, dynamic camera stuff. It's a very fun movie. At some point, it decides that it wants to say something as well. It kind of has a message that is not always present in these sorts of movies. And as far as it goes, I thought it was fine. Pretty cool, and worked with the plot. I appreciated some new characters. John Cena's Peacemaker. I didn't know much about this character, and I'm not sure how comic book accurate he was, but the fact that they're giving him a show spinoff, I think can lead to some very interesting places in terms of what DC is saying about America and the American government generally. I was a big fan. He has one of my favorite lines, if not my favorite line in the entire DCU at this point, that I'm not going to spoil, but it's absolutely excellent. As usual, Margot Robbie has some of the standout moments. James Gunn very much using the sort of style that was done in Birds of Prey, which I loved, and leaning into how insane and awesome Harley can be. New character as well, Ratcatcher 2, played by Cleo Cazo. My God, if I wasn't just shaking it with disgust of rats at some points in this movie.
Sebastian is adorable.
Yeah, undeniably true. But yeah, I thought she was a cool character as well. And seeing the quick, I don't think it's a spoiler, seeing Taika pop up very quickly as her father, as the original Ratcatcher,
a great cameo,
was cool as well. David Dastmalchian as Polka-Dot Man, an absurd character, but someone who you can't help but end up like having fun watching and seeing where he goes. So yeah, I thought this movie had some fun twists and turns, solid action, and as I pointed out to you guys, full frontal male nudity, which may be the first in any comic book movie ever.
Thank God, it's about time.
Watchmen did it first.
Oh my God, you're totally right. That was digital, though.
Don't even remember the scene that you're talking about, Brian.
No, it's blink and you miss it. It's someone who gets killed.
It's a camp.
Is it
the camp?
Okay.
Scene.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. You quickly see
That's very
some
funny.
dong flop back. See some dong flopping. Good call out,
James
Brian.
Gunn. He's taken advantage of that hard R.
Yeah.
Well, it was kind of soft, if you ask me. So
hard R.
It's a flaccid R.
Yeah, all the things you've said, we're not going to have a very interesting difference of opinion here. I might be the most hot on it, though. It's one of my favorite superhero movies of forever. This movie's right up my alley.
Okay.
It is a call and response to a lot of the Marvel stuff, even the DC stuff, and for that, I am grateful. This movie at every point zigs when you think it's going to zag, and that's like my favorite thing about it, is it's like unexpected, and you're really not sure where it's going to go. I think even some of the more cliche ending parts, like I wasn't wholly expecting, and it still ends up surprising and delighting in almost every single scene. The set pieces are awesome. They're hilarious. They're action-packed. They are a little over the top and bloody, but lean into it, right? This is the time to do it in this, and I think it's cartoonish enough. It's very reminiscent, I bring up this movie a lot, but of Starship Troopers. Like, it's very over the top with brains and stuff going everywhere. Like, it's very silly at a certain point where it's less gruesome and it's a little more wacky. Brian, you were gonna say?
No, yeah, I agree with that. Like, as I was cringing, I was generally giggling as well, because they are kind of as gory as they are. There's always kind of a tongue-in-cheek there, I think.
Yeah, it's so over the top that you can't help but laugh in certain instances.
Yeah, just like RoboCop, right, Chris?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Let's not.
It's interesting because it is over the top and way too over the top violent for the joy of the audience. But yet, in some movies it's fine, some movies it's not.
Go back and check out our RoboCop episode, loyal listeners and viewers.
So I just think, you should definitely do that. I just think across the board, the performances are excellent. I think it's not even worthwhile to compare this to the first Suicide Squad because they're just two completely different movies. It's
different
like,
leagues.
One is like total studio fuckery, and this one is just like let the director make a good movie without all that like crisscross applesauce stuff coming on. It kind of actually suffers more because of that original movie because the plot is actually fairly similar. So in comparing it, it kind of ruins kind of the trajectory. But again, even the scene with, we introduce, very similar to the first Suicide Squad, we introduce a daughter as a motivation for our main character. But again, it kind of zags. It kind of zags in the moments that you're expecting something to happen. And it's really cool. All the action's cool. I love everybody's like power sets and everything. Like they kind of like...
very unique.
Describe it, and it's unique, and you think, why would this stuff make sense? The movie even is a little messy at the end as far as like it decides to make some time jumps, but I think it totally works. I just had such a good time with this. I watched this like a Saturday morning that I was off, and that's perfect. It's perfect time. It's a great Saturday matinee movie. Kind of like everything I would want from the type of movie that the Suicide Squad can be. Absolutely a blast. John Cena, thank God. I mean, after F9, which like I was kind of like positive on,
this is a much stronger performance.
He's got something that was definitely not on display.
And I know F9. Exactly the line you're talking about because I audibly like watched it alone.
It's incredible.
I laughed so hard, so funny. It's really good. Rick Flag, who's like who gives a shit about Rick, and he's been in a bunch of these movies. You know, he was in Suicide Squad. Wasn't he also in Wonder Woman or
he was you're thinking Steve Trevor, but Rick Flag
so interchangeable, has
only been in Suicide Squad.
That's hilarious because I thought Rick Flag was in another. I was like, oh, he's kind of this like weird link between these movies, but I guess he was only in Suicide Squad. He has a counterpart that's very similar that blink and you think they're the same actor with the same writer.
I will say to that point about Blinken, the same actor, Idris Elba stepping in for what was going to be Will Smith's character, but changing it, I thought held up really well and had a lot of really cool, like his gadgets. Every time he pulled out a new gadget, it was like, okay, this guy's just got all the coolest weapons. So shout out to Idris Elba for, stepping in for Will Smith and still holding his own.
And it kind of like seems illogical at some point. I mean, it is because it's like make believe nanotech stuff. But like, there's like stuff that like towards the end kind of like grounds it a little more that I really appreciated it. Like, and the movie didn't have to do any of that. And it totally works. There's so many reoccurring gags that are funny. Every time someone goes into a backstory, you're kind of like, oh, here we go. But then it's interesting and it's fine and it's shot well and inventive and different. So across the board, really great, really fun time. Very happy, very like sad. Like I'm happy that I was on HBO Max, so it was so easy to watch. Especially with the surge of COVID cases and theaters may not being the best idea to go sit down in. With how things are, but. I'm a little disappointed that like it did so poorly.
It's not performing well at all.
So that's kind of sad because it is.
I am curious though to see what WB does in the future, even with the box office gross of this film, because every single movie that's come out this year has this like huge asterisk next to it, where it's like, yeah, it didn't make a ton of money. We definitely lost a shit ton of money on every movie that we're making, but we're also in different times. So like, is that reflective of whether or not the studios are going to be making sequels to any of these things? Or are they going to move forward with properties like Dune, for instance, that inevitably probably aren't going to do very well in theaters, but they've already kind of signed on to do a trilogy. Like, are they going to push forward despite not making all this money? And we'll see what happens. But I agree. It's sad that Suicide Squad is not performing very well.
Yeah,
I would say
it doesn't send the kind of response of like, yeah, we all enjoy. Like everybody seems to be enjoying.
Typically,
this, but
yeah, typically that would be the message.
I'm gonna tell you, Warner Brothers doesn't give a shit if they're not making money back. Like it really depends on, I guess, the subscriber base. Like if they're like, wow, HBO numbers are really great, and the corporate entities that are at Discovery or whoever the fuck owns HBO Max. Who knows? Can draw that line.
Well, it will be Discovery.
Can draw that line and go like Suicide Squad equaled this many subscribers, as opposed to Disney Plus. It's like this many people actually actively own Disney Plus and then paid an additional amount of money.
Yeah,
it's a little less easy to see those dollar signs. That all. Who knows? Who knows? Brian, you were gonna say.
No, I just think the fact this movie's not doing well in my opinion, is definitely not because of the quality of the movie. I think this is, as far as superhero movies go, pretty good. The issues are that it's an R rating, which already limits a huge portion of comic book audiences in the best of times. On top of the surge in COVID, it's a bad situation for movies right now, I think.
Yeah, but we also saw where, Deadpool, very hard R, especially on the like profanity and sexual content.
Of course, and this would have been right in that same market.
Logan
right?
also did fairly well, so they've had, they really haven't had a ton of misses with known IP, especially with like known IP, right?
Sure.
But yeah, in summation, Harley Quinn has some of the best moments, and again, the expectations of what's happening in every scene, just like full of such joy. So really enjoyed this one. Any other thoughts before we get into the spoilers?
No, let's do it.
Let's roll that spoiler bumper.
Go for it.
I'm going to say it. The best part of this movie is Pete Davidson gets shot right in the face.
That's what. So
like, I knew you're going to love it.
So
early.
For months.
So early.
For months. We've been wondering who's going to die first, And we've said in the past that we don't think Pete Davidson would make it very long. And if you don't count the death of Weasel, he's technically like the first person to die.
You can't count the death.
Weasel lives.
Weasel does live. So Pete Davidson was technically the first person to die within like the first 15 minutes of the movie. So
already off the bat, that scene, which is like reworked significantly for the trailer, so I think it like works really well in this film. Like as a fresh scene. The back and forth with Weasel and being like just this kind of cute but also kind of horrifying monster, and Rick Flag getting that bit about like he's perfectly harmless. I mean, he has killed 27 kids.
Yes.
You guys sat me next to a werewolf? Yeah. The banter back and forth between everybody is excellent.
We do get Pete Davidson coming back. Who he is in the he gets a title card in the credits, which I'm like, he's barely in it, but he does like return for a little bit. And I was like, okay, they gave Pete a little more to do. He gets to be a douche. Where like happier that he's dead.
The fact that the movie starts off with this set of characters that we are led to believe are going to be like the main characters potentially, and then all of them but three, I guess, if we count Weasel, are just murdered gruesomely within the first 20 minutes of the film. It's just absolutely ridiculous, but like perfect for a Suicide Squad movie in which, these criminals are capable of dying left and right.
I think it's the perfect
the Flula Borg thing with him being Javelin and like handing the Javelin off to Harley.
And that
but
following
not being
through
able
to the entire movie.
It's great. It's great.
So amazing.
It didn't necessarily pay off how I was expecting, but once I realized it, I was like, okay, yeah, this in terms of the Javelin. But to your point, yeah, showing how expendable these people actually are and setting the stakes high early, that like main characters are at risk of dying here. I think that was a perfect way to do it, because it was almost like I don't want to compare it to actual reality, but similar to like a D-Day scene, like Normandy, like we're storming and just complete failure off the bat, which ends up being a perfect distraction actually for the surviving squad. But
and our badass like protagonist that is like starts the movie off in prison, and we just see that he's like a bad motherfucker. Totally is like,
yes, exactly.
And of course it's Michael Rooker.
Yeah,
big long.
He has to
James
be.
Gunn.
He has to be in every James Gunn movie.
He's really good in this one too. Like I think he's like, for what he's asked to do, he kills it. It's really good. What are some of our other favorite moments? Chris, you want to start off?
Most of David Dastmalchian's, Polka-Dot Man's hallucinations cracked me up. The fact that he sees his mom everywhere. There's a group shot early on in the movie where he's looking at the team, and even King Shark has like King Shark elements, but it has the woman's face. It's just strange. Or the scene where he's dancing in the club, just surrounded by his mom, had me dying.
It's one of the greatest lines. It's like, I don't really want to kill people, but then I imagine they're my mother, and then I can do it. It's just it's horrific and hilarious.
But I was actually shocked that he made it so far into the movie, all the way into the third act. Like he's kind of one of the main characters of the film, which is shocking.
Yeah, he definitely gets there.
Polka-Dot Man is such an unknown character, but David Dastmalchian made him lovable in the movie. And then King Shark, of course, all around is just
voiced by Sylvester Stallone.
Sylvester Stallone, yeah. He's basically just the Groot of this movie, like the lovable giant monster. He's a little more vicious than Groot, but he has that great scene where he like discovers all those sea creatures in the aquarium and he's like playing around with them. And then as soon as the tank breaks, they try to devour him. That's like classic James Gunn sense of humor. It was so funny.
But that's like,
Brian,
actually, King Shark has like emotional beats too. It's just something that you in a
He
lot of
does.
DC movies that have just been avoided, like making us give a shit about characters. And like this movie just follows that simple but like hard to execute, I guess, from all the stuff we've seen, like logic, which is like, oh, make us like them with like moments like that. This movie's full of
make us care about them as characters. You know, it doesn't matter that they're superheroes. Make us love the people behind the masks.
Yeah,
They
stopping
don't always do that.
Stopping for those little moments. It makes all the difference in the world.
Agreed.
Brian, some of your favorite moments.
In terms of standout moments, I brought it up. I brought some of them up earlier, but this stuff with Harley Quinn, where we get the flower moments, all of her
so
kind
good.
of like hallucination stuff is so good. Where I also really appreciated the pseudo, like the 5 minute potential romantic drama movie that she's involved in, and she ends up having to kill him. I was like, this is just so on brand for Harley Quinn to be like totally in, just like head over heels for this guy, but ultimately, you know, she knows what it's going to lead to, this sort of love. So all that stuff is really
Just
great.
when she just talks through it too. Like I told
Yeah,
myself,
she's just
I wouldn't get-
rationalizing it.
and I gotta say, killing children, bit of a red flag.
Yes. I don't want to butcher the line because I don't think I have it written down here, but the Peacemaker line.
Oh, it's my mission is peace. I don't care how many men, women, and children I have to slaughter to get it.
Yes.
Peace will be achieved. You know. It's
So
something like that.
this whole thing, and I just was not expecting this to be like a pseudo American intelligence operation happening in other countries that's kind of involved in a coup to overthrow the government. I was just like, holy shit. Like this movie is really like doing something that most comic book movies are not this direct in their critiques on American empire and things like this. So even though, you know, it's kind of a over the top premise with Starro being Starro being an alien or whatever, obviously it's very sci-fi fantasy, but the fact that the government went to these lengths to cover it up, and the fact that they're experimenting on people, just some very, very dark themes outside of the violence in the movie that I was just surprised by in a comic book movie.
I just love this movie so much because it's like they're like, it's Project Starfish, and you're like, oh, it's probably some like satellite GoldenEye type thing, and it's like, no, it's literally a starfish from space.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we saw it in the trailers, and I've even, well, Christian may not have seen it in the trailers, but I've been saying for months, and you know, frequent guest of our show, James Barnes, he and I have been saying for months, like, Starro's in this movie, and that's insane, and it was insane. I love Starro's final line before it dies.
I was about to bring this up.
Where it's just like, I'm also going to butcher this line. I don't have it written down, but he was just like, I was happy floating in space, gazing at the stars. And like humans,
you
totally deterred his course of happiness and then experimented on it for 30 years. But it was just kind of like a beautiful death for a ridiculous monster.
I love it. Almost even thoughtful about the dumb big starfish monster. Like, it's thoughtful. There's thoughtful things throughout, which is appreciated. I very much appreciate it.
Right. Even in a self-contained movie, we get ultimately kind of a sympathetic villain. And well, we realize that the villain actually isn't who we thought was the villain in some sense. But yeah, that line actually made me think of a bit in Loki episode 5, where it's kind of spoilers for Loki, but I think you guys know what I'm talking about. If you've seen Loki, there is a great monologue about the history of a character who similarly travels through space to get away from things. But ultimately, the final scene, as much as it grossed me out, the effectiveness of Harley coming through with that spear and all the goddamn rats coming inside of this
God.
thing. I'm disgusted thinking about
And
it.
you could
but
see
what a
like the
great
blood
payoff.
pooling in Starro's eyes.
Don't-
They just
No,
start
Chris,
chewing. Once they just start
Please
chewing on
don't.
what are essentially like nervous synapses.
The nervous system.
Yeah.
Oh dear God. Oh, so absolutely just chilling. Yeah, but an incredible payoff for like, who is she gonna give this to? I thought it was gonna be some cameo, some random cameo or something, you know. But yeah, that was a great payoff.
But as soon as Starro comes out and like whatever the Suicide Squad Central Command is, the American government wing that's like directing the Suicide Squad, the one dude that runs the computers like we got a fucking kaiju.
Yes.
That's Steve Agee, right?
Steve Agee, yeah, he's excellent. The
He's
whole
very
team
good in this.
I didn't
And
see
he
the turn.
played. Did you know that he played King Shark on set?
Oh really?
Yeah, so he was the stand-in for the CGI model, and then Sylvester
He is
Stallone voiced the character.
9'7", so
Yeah, it makes sense.
it's perfect.
He's a very tall man.
Brian, any other favorite moments?
Specifically, I definitely second the stuff with Polka-Dot Man. I was surprised because I saw in the trailer we saw some of his him like shooting bubbles, and it looked really silly to me. But I thought once you see like what these bubbles actually do, you get the backstory about the what the sickness he's with.
The
I thought it was-
interdimensional disease.
Yeah, I thought it was ultimately pretty effective, and the way that he would morph over time, I don't know if that was practical or CG, but very, very well done special effects on him just morphing throughout the whole movie.
Yeah, and it kind
Absolutely.
of builds up to his powers and stuff. There's like some mystery there at first, and
Yeah.
really creepy. Yeah, so good, so good. I think one of my favorite scenes, and it's got to be one of my favorite scenes in a movie in a long time, is the kind of cock-sizing contest that Peacemaker and Bloodsport have as they're going through the refugee camp, just murdering people in like stylistic fashion, and then it gets so impractical. It doesn't make any sense. It's silly. We get to the end, and it's just Rick Flag there being like, "Hey, like, how'd you get here?" Like, just sitting with that moment of them having just murdered
Trail
all
of
the
bodies behind.
How did you get past all my men?
Oh, those men? What men?
We didn't see anybody.
That was a hilarious gag. Yeah, 100%.
That's so good. And yeah, I love to reference back to what I was talking about. I love that at the end, like Bloodsport gets surrounded and he uses all his tools and he kind of like runs out. You're like, oh, there is like a logic to
Right, there's a limit. Yep.
to his like setup. I really appreciated that. Oh yeah, everything with like King Shark when he's about to eat Ratcatcher too, and she's just sleeping so deeply she doesn't even know. And he's like about to eat, like put her wholly in his mouth. But even the stuff with like Rick Flag and like the last fight scene between Rick, like I actually gave a shit about Rick Flag. The fuck. And so that last fight scene was like hard to watch, and it was like, oh man, this team fell apart, and it's so sad.
There's also, we were talking a little bit about John Cena's performance in this movie compared to F9, and there's like genuine emotion in some of his line delivery, especially in that scene when he's like, "Don't make me do this."
Yeah.
Like he doesn't want to kill Rick Flag, and you feel it, which was surprising. I think John Cena actually has a great knack for comedy. He's just not utilized in that genre as much as he should be.
Right.
What is that, a toilet seat?
I love the scene when they go to the bar and they're like hiding out in the bar and they just like start, it's a great character moment. It's that moment from like Avengers, Age of Ultron when they're all like hanging out, like letting the characters so good. It's all that's very enjoyable, and I could have hung out with these characters a lot longer. Again, just super super good. I might watch it again before it leaves the service. This is that much fun.
Wow.
Yeah, Margot Robbie shooting that dude after their like love montage, just
Perfect. Absolutely perfect.
I do
with the gun too. There's a
have a
Chekhov's
question.
gun. You see the gun. She lays. They kind of make love and make a mess everywhere. And then when they're laying, the gun is next to her. And I was like, huh.
I'm not sure I caught that.
There's a pistol there. Yeah, they Chekhov's gun in that scene. So good. So good. Chris, you're going to say.
My last question is, what does James Gunn have against birds? There's a ton of bird genocide in this film. Like the very opening of the movie, Michael Rooker kills a bird, and then that dictator like lights all these birds on fire, and you can hear them scream. It was like horrible. Mickey and I, while we were watching, we were like, what the fuck does he have against birds?
I think it's just cruelty, right? It's just a lot of cruelty.
Yeah, it must be.
Shorthand for cruelty. It's like,
Yeah,
kill
exactly.
more birds.
Kill
They'll get it.
birds.
Evil.
Look how sweet these birds sound. Let's burn them to death.
Dear God.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. Any final thoughts on Suicide Squad? Yeah,
I,
oh, go ahead.
I hope, even though there's a lot of things working against this movie right now, I think that it'll eventually find its audience and is ultimately a very consistent DC movie that's definitely worth watching. I mean, it's like, if you like these sorts of movies, if you like the Guardians movies, you're looking for a more adult ensemble that will just lean into the batshit insanity. Obviously, we've gotten spoilers already. You've probably already seen this movie, but this movie just has so much fun, the entire time. And to your point, Christian, it did some things that I was not expecting it to do, which I wasn't expecting from another Suicide Squad movie.
Yeah,
Nice.
I didn't have faith, actually. Like, I know I trust James Gunn and everything, but I just like DC is just not good with these tone pieces where it's just kind of like humorous and stuff. Like, they just haven't nailed it. And it even, like, I guess to frame it, it's like a successful comedic Zack Snyder movie. It's very Snyder-esque because there's all these moments of like visual novels. He's being like, okay, I'm going to take this idea of Snyder's style and actually make it fun, funny, interesting, make the characters deep, make them unique. But I'm also going to have these moments.
There are chapter breaks in this movie as well.
Yeah, very graphic novel style. Like, he leans into he actually leans into giving it the personality of the DCU without all the stupid, like, really boring brooding shit that happens, right? There's very little wasted brooding that's happening in this film.
Brian, you were going to say?
Just to your point, I'd forgotten. I really liked the credits. They did really interesting transitions with them, and that was consistently enjoyable throughout the whole movie. A real cool touch, I thought.
Yeah, and there's moments where it just
Agreed.
breaks out to like a music video. Like, there's so many moments. Like, the Harley Quinn flower scene is a classic Zack Snyder type of style scene. The them falling in love, very classic Zack Snyder style. Them falling in love, big pop needle drop, big artistic graphic novel imagery. But it's just working a lot better because the connective tissue just makes a lot more sense.
The needle drops are also, to be fair, they're also very James Gunn as well. If you look at the two Guardians of the Galaxy films, so he's also very into like setting a tone with a playlist.
I would say even more so. There's just more iconography and more like not that the Guardians look bad or anything, but I just think there's more Snyder in a positive way. I mean, not in a positive way as far as the framing of shots. The slow-mo. There's slow-mo happening frequently. Chris, you were going to say.
Well, to piggyback off of what Brian was saying, despite how this movie's performing, I am excited that Warner Brothers has already come out and said that they are looking forward to working with James Gunn again. Like we mentioned at the top, there's that Peacemaker show that's coming out, but even on top of that, they already want him to come back and make another movie for them once he's done making Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So they seem to have a really great working relationship, and I'm excited to see what he does in the future with the DC properties. Yeah,
absolutely. Lastly, before we close out, I did want to call attention to one more scene, which was the scene I was talking about in a pre-spoiler, which is Idris Elba and his daughter. Like, when they start fighting and going back and forth, it just adds so much more reality. Like, it feels like a real relationship even within this comic book thing. And what should be so tropey. We just saw it. It's like literally the same plot as the other Suicide, but it's not melancholic or like, over soap opera. Like, it's not classic. It's like, what would this father actually be like, right? Would he be like Will Smith in that previous movie? To like Will Smith, I think, performing well. Like, I don't think he acted bad in that movie, but just the writing of him being like all sentimental about it like didn't make sense for that character, like a murdering assassin. Like, this character makes way more sense with the way he would handle it. Like, obviously he still cares, but that person's gonna have this shield up and be like, I had it way worse, like, you're fine. I just love that interaction. It just felt way more authentic to who that character is.
Christian, I think that may have been the best emotional beat for me. That scene leading into her seeing him on TV and being proud of him. Yeah. Just like, that's so sweet. It's a real nice arc.
Yeah, there's like genuinely nice moments. Like for all its very over the top blood and guts, all that stuff. Like there's moments that you're like, oh, that's sweet. And I genuinely like these. And I didn't want to see. I thought King Shark died, and I was like, oh no.
No, he seems to be indestructible.
There
but
is
to speak to those like father-daughter relationships. I do like that setup where Idris Elba and Ratcatcher 2 are kind of also a pseudo father-daughter relationship within the film. It makes that dynamic more impactful because of that scene with his daughter at the beginning of the movie. You know, he's trying to make amends with somebody else. And I did dig that.
I did say lastly, but I do want to mention one other thing. The one thing that felt a little tropey was towards the end when he decides he's going to be a leader. You know, he's like, oh, Bloodsport is the leader that we thought he could be. He has it's the same moment as like the Avengers when he's like, you do this, you do that, you do this. And then he's like, he tells King Shark like, chomp. It's not smash. Nom.
He says nom.
Nom as opposed to smash. But it's so funny because like half the characters die or get seriously injured doing it completely fails.
That is a great scene though, where Bloodsport is pointing at Starro and he's like, Polka-Dot man, do you see that? Like, do you see who that is? And David Dastmalchian is just like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then Idris Elba's like, it's your mom. And then it cuts to Starro and it's just a giant version of his mom again.
Yes.
It's just such a funny bit. And I'm so glad that it reoccurred so many times in the film.
Yeah, did not give up on it. Was like, we're going to go. Little sad.
I want to say,
it's a little sad that he died. Obviously.
Me too.
Yeah,
but he died a superhero.
He did.
He had a great arc in the movie.
He did. Which who would have fucking only James Gunn for Polka-Dot?
Right.
I know.
The person who wants to kill his mother and shoots polka dots at his face.
It's crazy.
Great.
So it kind of goes without saying that Viola Davis is always great and everything.
Sure. Yeah.
The straight person in this movie, she's just so intense and so like in it that I just wanted to shout her out because we hadn't really talked about her much. Obviously, she's not the most fun part of the movie, but she's doing exactly
Amanda
what she
Waller's
needs to
not
do in that
supposed to
role.
be.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, she's very despicable in her role, and she does it great. Oh, yeah, and she's like a badass, like obviously awful.
She's
person.
intense.
But like when Idris Elba goes to like stab her and she just doesn't flinch, she's like, oh, jeez. She's like, I will bring I will bring the government down on you and your daughter. They will not live. I promise. Yeah, scary stuff. So that is The Suicide Squad. It is on HBO Max. Obviously, if you made it this far, hopefully you've seen it. If not, we are recommending it. It's a ton of fun. Gentlemen, where can people find more of your work on the internet?
Loyal viewers and listeners, you can find me on Twitter at Chris Conkling, talking about all things nerdy, comic books, television, movies, video games, collectibles. If it's nerdy, I'm talking about it.
And you can find me hiding in Jotunheim at True Pop-O-Holic on Twitter.
Brian, are you being experimented on, or are you doing the experimenting?
Find me in Jotunheim getting face fucked by a starfish.
It was an exotic vacation. Let me just leave it at that.
Very nice. And you can find me at Midnight Satire on all your favorite music streaming services, as well as Twitter and all that stuff. What are you laughing at?
I'm just an idiot.
No, you're not. We love you, Brian. Anyway, so Midnight Satire, new music coming out very soon, September 10th. Everybody, the world is waiting. We can say. So find us all there. Please follow us down below. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe. If you're listening, subscribe on your favorite podcast player, and find us on the Vice Versa, right? Audio feed has way more content. And if you want to see our beautiful faces and my gesticulation endlessly, our awkward pauses that I don't edit out anymore because of the video and content and time. So do that. Email us at popholicscast@gmail.com. We appreciate it. Tell a friend. Email us and ask you questions, comments, concerns. We'll shout your friend out. Be like, hey, Bill, listen to the Pop-O-Holics. And if your email says, hey, say hi to Bill, I'll be like, hey, Bill, Richard said you should listen to us. Also, you need to find more diverse friends, like a woman. Why don't you recommend Rebecca? Rebecca would love this show.
I don't know if our podcast has any right to talk about diversity.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Chris is Korean.